Imagine a man so blinded by pride that he threw away the very person who once built his empire. A husband who believed lies instead of love, and a wife who vanished into silence, only to return 6 years later with twins, and a truth powerful enough to ruin everything he thought he knew. This isn't just another love gone wrong story. It's about betrayal, justice, and redemption, the kind that doesn't come from revenge, but from rebuilding your worth when the world has already buried your name. In this cinematic Undercover CEO tale, inspired by Celebrity Undercover Stories, we follow Lena Hale, a scientist cast out of her own home after being framed for infidelity, while her husband, Adrian Mercer, rose higher in his corporate tower. Lena rebuilt herself from the ground up, creating a revolutionary company that exposed corruption, saved lives, and ultimately forced him to face the truth he once refused to see. This story will pull you in, whether you're here for business drama, family emotion, or that one unforgettable twist that makes you say, "Oh, she did not just do that," because sometimes the best revenge isn't revenge at all. It's success served cold with compassion. Stay with us until the end. Every moment matters. Every word burns. And when the truth finally lands, you'll realize love may forgive, but it never forgets. The sun rested high above the Mercer estate that afternoon, pouring its golden warmth across 20 acres of manicured gardens. The air shimmered with perfume, roses, champagne, and quiet anticipation. Every detail of the ceremony seemed perfect. A white piano glistened near the altar. A string quartet played softly under silk canopies. 300 guests in their finest attire whispered the same thing. It's the wedding of the year. At the center of it all stood Adrian Mercer, the heir to Helix Biotech, a man whose signature could move markets. He looked every bit the perfect groom, tall, tailored, composed, except for the faint shadow behind his eyes. Beside him, Clara Voss, radiant in a silver gown, squeezed his hand, her diamond bracelet flashing in the sunlight. The moment the officiant lifted his book, a hush fell, and then a sound cut through the music. A faint tremor at first, like a storm breaking far away, grew into the heavy thrum of spinning rotors. Heads turned. The musicians faltered. Even the petals scattered by the flower girls seemed to hesitate midair. From beyond the tall pines, a silver helicopter sliced through the sky, descending slowly toward the estate's helipad. No one moved. The guests shielded their eyes from the glare. Cameras flashed. Whispers spread through the crowd like fire. "Is that part of the event?" someone murmured. Clara's smile stiffened. Adrian's face drained of color. He knew that helicopter. The blade slowed to silence. The door opened. A woman stepped out. She wasn't dressed like a guest or even someone who belonged there at all. She wore a white tailored suit, immaculate, confident, yet unadorned. Her auburn hair caught the light as the wind played with it, and for a second it almost looked like fire. Then 2 small figures appeared behind her, a boy and a girl, no older than 6, each holding one of her hands. A gasp tore through the crowd. The woman's heels clicked against the marble path as she walked with deliberate grace toward the altar. The twins followed, their steps steady, their eyes wide and curious, eyes the exact gray-green shade as Adrian Mercer's. Clara turned to Adrian. Her whisper was sharp, trembling. "Who is she?" Adrian's lips parted, but no sound came. He couldn't breathe. He couldn't blink. The world had narrowed to the woman walking toward him, the one he'd buried deep in his past, erased from his company, his family, his life. She stopped at the edge of the aisle. Silence swallowed everything, the music, the chatter, even the breeze. Only the faint hum of the helicopter lingered in the distance, fading like a warning echo. The woman lifted her chin. Her voice carried clear and calm, strong enough to reach every seat in that garden. "My name is Lena Hale," she said. "And these are your children." Gasps erupted like breaking glass. Guests turned, searching each other's faces for understanding. The twins stood silently beside her, their small fingers intertwined, unaware of the storm they had just unleashed. Clara's composure cracked. "Adrian, what is she talking about?" But Adrian didn't answer. He couldn't. His gaze was fixed on the children, the way the boy's posture mirrored his own at that age, the way the girl's curious eyes glimmered with intelligence. Every breath he took felt like confession. In the front row, his mother clutched her pearls. His father's jaw tightened. They saw it too. The resemblance that needed no DNA test. Lena took another step forward, her expression unreadable, part sorrow, part resolve. 6 years ago, you threw me out of your home, she continued softly. You said I was a liar, that I betrayed you. You erased me from your life. But the truth doesn't vanish, Adrian. It grows. The words hit like thunder, shaking the illusion of perfection that had wrapped this event. Every guest now realized this was no romantic ceremony. It was an ambush dressed in white roses. Adrian swallowed hard. He could feel hundreds of eyes piercing him, waiting for an explanation he didn't have. Clara's voice trembled with disbelief. This is insane. Security, get them out. But before the guards could move, Lena raised a hand, calm as ice. I wouldn't do that, she said. Unless you want the world to know what your company has been hiding. A heavy silence followed. Even the security team hesitated. Adrian's pulse pounded in his ears. Lena stepped closer, her tone steady, almost gentle. You wanted a new beginning, she said. But you forgot. You can't start over until you face what you've buried. The boy squeezed her hand tighter. The little girl tilted her head and whispered, Mommy, is that him? Lena nodded. Yes, sweetheart, she replied quietly. That's your father. It was the kind of sentence that stops time. The kind that rewrites every heartbeat in the room. Clara's bouquet slipped from her trembling hand, scattering white petals across the marble floor, like the remnants of a lie collapsing under the weight of truth. Adrian finally spoke, his voice hoarse, barely audible. Lena, what have you done? She met his eyes, those familiar eyes that once swore eternal love, and answered with terrifying calm. Not what you think. What you deserved. The camera could almost freeze there, the fallen petals, the pale groom, the trembling bride. The woman who refused to disappear. Somewhere in the background, the twins stood tall, unaware that their arrival had just rewritten the ending of a story everyone thought was over. And as the wind stirred again, carrying away the scent of roses, the narrator's voice would drop low, measured, filled with promise. He built an empire on ambition and pride. But the truth he buried 6 years ago just landed on his doorstep. 6 years before the helicopter interrupted his wedding, Adrian Mercer believed he had everything. At 31, he was the face of modern innovation. Brilliant, charming heir to Helix Biotech, one of the most powerful pharmaceutical empires in North America. And beside him was Lena Hale, the woman everyone envied and admired, a biochemist whose discoveries were already saving lives. Together, they were a phenomenon, the power couple who promised to cure the world. Their story began in the lab, under sterile lights and the faint hum of machines. Lena had just cracked a new synthesis for immune cell regeneration. Adrian had offered to help refine the process, and somehow science turned into laughter. Laughter turned into late-night coffees, and late nights turned into forever. Their wedding was an event that dominated the headlines. Newspapers called them, "The future of medicine meets the heart of innovation." It was a union of intellect and idealism, of love and legacy, and for a time, it really was perfect. They traveled together, lectured together, and built programs that brought medical access to poor communities. Every article, every interview painted them as untouchable. When they spoke of changing the world, people believed them. But in the shadows of that brilliance stood Damon Voss, Adrian's childhood friend, his confidant since prep school, and the man he trusted with his company's finances. He was quick-witted, persuasive, and had a smile that could open any door. When Adrian appointed him CFO of Helix Biotech, no one questioned the decision. Damon brought with him his younger sister Clara, a public relations expert with flawless style and a talent for flattery. She organized charity galas and investor dinners, quickly becoming a fixture in Adrian and Lena's world. Her compliments were warm, her laughter contagious, but her eyes were calculating. Lena noticed it first. The lingering glances, the subtle comments. Clara would joke that Adrian deserved someone who understood the business side of genius. It seemed harmless, even flattering until it wasn't. One evening, During a black tie gala at the Helix headquarters, the ballroom shimmered with glass chandeliers and music from a live orchestra. Lena, in a deep emerald gown, moved gracefully between groups of diplomats and scientists, speaking passionately about the upcoming cancer trial she was leading. Adrian stood nearby, watching her with quiet pride. That was when Damon approached, 2 glasses of whiskey in hand. He handed one to Adrian and leaned in. "You know," he said casually, "she's remarkable. The press loves her. The board loves her. Sometimes I wonder if they love her more than they love you." Adrian laughed it off. "She's my wife, Damon. Her success is my success." But Damon's tone stayed low, deliberate. "Of course, just keep your eyes open. Ambition can look a lot like devotion if you're not careful." He left the sentence unfinished, but the seed was planted. It was subtle, almost invisible, but it grew quietly like mold behind polished glass. Later that night, Clara caught Adrian alone on the balcony overlooking the city. She smiled in that slow, practiced way. "She's lucky to have you," she said. "Not every man could handle a woman that brilliant. It must be exhausting sometimes, keeping up." Adrian forced a polite smile, but her words lingered. He didn't realize it then, but Clara and Damon were experts at this, turning admiration into poison. Weeks turned into months. Little things began to feel off. Lena's schedule filled with late meetings, new research teams, urgent calls from the lab at midnight. Adrian, who once admired her drive, began to feel neglected. He'd wake up to empty sheets and half-written notes. "Back to the lab, don't wait up." One morning over breakfast, he asked softly, "Do you ever think we're working too much?" Lena smiled without looking up from her tablet. "You can't change the world by sleeping in, Adrian." He laughed, but something inside him tightened. The warmth between them dimmed, slowly, imperceptibly, until routine replaced romance. And all the while, Damon and Clara stood close, whispering their versions of truth. They made sure the small cracks widened just enough for doubt to seep in. The tension came to a head at the annual Helix Biotech Charity Gala. It was supposed to be their proudest night. Millions raised for cancer research. Celebrities in attendance, headlines guaranteed. Lena's speech electrified the audience. She ended with a line that drew thunderous applause. "Science doesn't belong to corporations. It belongs to humanity." Adrian smiled, but Damon leaned over and murmured, "Did you hear that? Sounds like someone positioning herself as the face of Helix, not the heart." Later, during the after-party, Adrian overheard 2 investors discussing Lena's independent projects. "She could start her own company tomorrow and take half the board with her," one said. That was the first night Adrian drank too much. It was also the first night he noticed how Clara's hand lingered on his arm when she laughed. From that point on, small doubts became conversations, and conversations became arguments. Every time Lena came home late, every time she smiled at her phone, every time she defended a colleague Damon didn't trust, the quiet storm inside Adrian grew louder. The house that once echoed with laughter turned cold. Their shared desk became 2 separate offices. Their conversations became negotiations. And yet if you asked either of them, they would still say they were fine. They would still smile for photos, still hold hands for interviews, still wear the illusion perfectly, because when you live inside a glass palace, you learn to smile even as the cracks form beneath your feet. But somewhere between the champagne toasts and late-night lab reports, something fragile had begun to die. Neither of them could see it clearly yet, but the perfect facade was already splintering, and by the time the first accusation came, neither love nor logic would be enough to save them. It happened on a Thursday night, the kind of night when the city outside Adrian Mercer's penthouse was calm, almost innocent. The rain had stopped hours earlier, leaving the glass walls glistening with reflections from the skyline. Inside, the world that Adrian and Lena had built together was beginning to quietly, fatally fracture. He sat on the edge of their bed, his jaw locked, a phone trembling in his hand. The screen glowed with messages that didn't belong. Texts from a stranger, messages filled with intimacy, dates, private details. Each one sent from Lena's number. Each one impossible to explain away. He had read them a dozen times already, trying to convince himself they weren't real. But the images, hotel receipts, photos, a message that read, "Can't wait to see you again," it felt like a knife twisting deeper with every glance. When Lena stepped out of their ensuite bathroom, wrapped in a white robe, towel drying her hair, she froze. Adrian's eyes were dark, distant. She felt the chill before he even spoke. "Who is Michael?" he asked quietly. Lena blinked, confused. "Michael? Don't lie to me." His voice cracked like thunder. 3 months of messages. Hotel rooms. "You met him while I was overseas, didn't you?" Her heartbeat stuttered. "Adrian, I don't know any Michael." He stood abruptly, the phone shaking in his hand. "Then explain this." He threw the device onto the bed. She picked it up, scrolling through messages that appeared to be from her. Her name, her number, words she never wrote, plans she never made. "These are fake," she whispered, horror blooming across her face. "Someone fabricated these." "Stop." His voice was low, cold. "Don't insult me. I can smell his cologne on your clothes. You've been lying to me for months." Lena's mouth went dry. She wanted to scream, to beg him to see reason, but something inside him had already decided. And then the final blow came, not from him, but from the doorway, Damon Voss. He entered without knocking, carrying a small evidence bag. "Adrian," he said quietly. "Security found these in Lena's car." He handed it over, a man's watch and a hotel key card. Lena's knees buckled. "I've never seen those before." "Enough." Adrian's voice trembled with restrained fury. "Get out. Please, Adrian, listen to me. Get out of my house," her voice cracked. "I love you. Why would I throw away everything we built?" But he wouldn't meet her eyes. His fists were clenched, his breathing shallow, his heart walled off behind betrayal he believed was true. Outside, thunder rolled again, as if the sky itself was mourning. Security appeared at the door. Damon gave a small nod. "Escort Mrs. Mercer to her car." Lena stumbled backward, tears streaking her cheeks. "You're making a terrible mistake," she whispered. "Someone's setting me up." "You set yourself up," Damon said flatly. "I warned him." Adrian's shoulders were rigid as he turned away. He didn't see her break down. He didn't see the moment when love turned into disbelief. Within minutes, her life was dismantled. Her access cards deactivated. Her email locked. Her accounts frozen. By the time she reached the front gates of the Mercer estate, she was no longer a wife. She was an outcast. Rain began to fall again, light at first, then heavier until the windshield blurred. She drove aimlessly through the city, her breath shallow, her hands trembling around the steering wheel. In the parking lot of a 24-hour pharmacy, she stopped. For the first time in hours, silence filled the car. Her reflection in the rearview mirror was barely recognizable. Her hair was damp, her eyes hollow. The woman who once believed in reason now looked like a ghost haunting her own life. Her phone buzzed. A notification. "Access revoked from Helix Biotech internal systems." Another came seconds later. Bank accounts temporarily frozen. Then another. Divorce proceedings initiated. Each ping felt like another nail sealing her fate. She stumbled out of the car, the fluorescent pharmacy lights humming above her. Her breath came in short, panicked bursts. Inside, she bought the only thing she could think of, a pregnancy test. 3 minutes later, under the sterile white light of the restroom, she stared at the result. 2 pink lines. Her knees gave way. She pressed her palm over her mouth, trying not to scream. The same man who had accused her of infidelity was the father of the children now growing inside her. She sat there for a long time, long enough for the lights to flicker once, long enough for the truth to sink like lead. She wasn't just betrayed. She was erased. By dawn, she drove back toward Helix Tower, determined to confront Adrian, to make him see reason. Security stopped her at the entrance. She pleaded, "Tell him I need to see him. Tell him I'm pregnant." The guard disappeared inside. 10 long minutes passed before he returned. His face was blank. "Mr. Mercer says that given your infidelity, he has no reason to believe the child is his. You'll receive contact from legal after the birth." Something inside her cracked open. She turned her head, and through the glass doors, she saw Damon watching from the lobby, his expression unreadable. That was when she knew. This wasn't just misunderstanding. This was orchestration. That night, her phone stopped ringing. Friends vanished. Colleagues turned away. By midnight, she was sleeping in her car at the edge of a grocery store parking lot. one hand on her stomach, whispering to the life inside her, "I don't know why this happened, but I promise you we will survive." She didn't know how yet, but somewhere deep within the wreckage of her broken heart, something fierce was taking shape, something that would one day make the name Mercer tremble. And far away, in the comfort of his penthouse, Adrian stared at the city lights, convinced he'd freed himself from deceit, never realizing he had just destroyed the only person who had truly loved him. For weeks, Lena Hale disappeared from the city's orbit as if she had never existed. Her name was quietly removed from Helix Biotech's employee registry. Her access to company databases revoked. The charity projects she once led were reassigned to Clara Voss. The journalists who had once quoted her now avoided her calls. It was as if someone had pressed delete on her entire life. She lived out of her car, parked in the corner of a dimly lit supermarket lot. Her only possessions packed into 2 suitcases and a box of research notes she refused to abandon. Each night she reclined in the driver's seat, one hand resting on her growing stomach, listening to the hum of the streetlights overhead. She wasn't sure what hurt more, the betrayal of her husband or the silence that followed. On the 7th morning, as dawn tinted the horizon pink, she stepped out to vomit behind the car. Her body was rebelling, exhausted and malnourished. That's when she heard a voice, firm but kind. "You're either pregnant, sick, or both," the woman said. "And whichever it is, you shouldn't be out here alone." Lena turned. An older woman stood nearby, clutching a paper bag of groceries. Her face was weathered but warm, her gray hair pinned neatly beneath a faded scarf. "My name's Evelyn Carter," she continued, "and I don't leave people behind." That was how Evelyn found her, shaking, humiliated, and on the verge of giving up. Without asking too many questions, Evelyn offered her spare room in a modest house on the outskirts of town. It smelled of coffee and old books. The guest room had peeling wallpaper and a single bed. But to Lena, it felt like sanctuary. For the first time in weeks, she slept without fear. When morning came, she tried to repay Evelyn by cleaning, cooking, offering what little money she had left. The older woman waved her off. "You don't owe me anything yet. Just promise me one thing: when you find your strength again, use it for something good." The simplicity of those words sank deep. In the following days, Lena began piecing together fragments of her shattered life. She sold her wedding ring for a painful fraction of its value, $200. With that, she bought prenatal vitamins, a used laptop, and a prepaid internet card. Her first act wasn't searching for sympathy. It was gathering evidence. Every deleted file she could recover, every timestamp, every report she'd ever submitted to Helix Biotech. She compiled them meticulously. At night, she would stare at the documents glowing on her cracked screen, whispering to herself like a scientist working a case rather than a crime victim. They planted evidence. They needed me gone, and the more she searched, the clearer it became. Damon Voss was at the center of everything. He had orchestrated her expulsion, falsified data, and convinced Adrian she was the problem. But why? What was worth destroying a marriage for? The answer came one afternoon, inside a small coffee shop where she stopped to use Wi-Fi. 2 men in lab coats sat nearby, speaking quietly but urgently. "Helix's trial data doesn't make sense," one whispered. "Those liver toxicity rates, they were altered before submission." "Damon Voss signed off on them," the other replied. "If that ever gets out, they're done." Lena froze. Her mind ignited like a struck match. It wasn't jealousy. It wasn't personal. It was business, Sue. She realized Damon had used her fall as cover to falsify research and push a faulty cancer drug through approval. If she had stayed, she would have discovered the fraud. Her destruction was his protection. That night, she sat by Evelyn's fireplace, trembling, not from fear this time, but purpose. "He thinks he buried me," she whispered. "But he buried a seed." Evelyn looked up from her knitting. "Then it's time to grow, dear. Just make sure what you grow doesn't poison you too." Lena smiled faintly. It was the first smile in months. Days turned into weeks. Her belly grew, and so did her resolve. She started working small freelance projects, data analysis for clinics, scientific writing for research grants. It wasn't glamorous, but it kept her sharp. One day, while applying for another position online, A message popped up from a local community clinic seeking part-time help analyzing patient outcomes. She hesitated, then applied. When she arrived, the clinic was packed. Lines out the door, walls peeling, equipment decades old. Behind the front desk stood a woman in her 40s, fierce and focused, barking orders to volunteers. "You must be Dr. Hale," she said. "I'm Dr. Isabel Tran. I run this chaos." Lena laughed for the first time in what felt like a lifetime. Dr. Tran didn't care about her past, her scandal, or her pregnancy. All she cared about was skill. "You can work from that desk," Dr. Tran said. "We save lives here, not reputations." Lena threw herself into the work. She organized data, analyzed treatment results, and noticed a disturbing pattern. Patients taking a new Helix medication showed abnormally high liver damage rates, the same drug she had helped design years earlier. Her breath caught. "They released it," she whispered. When she brought the findings to Dr. Tran, the woman studied her silently. "You've just stumbled onto something big," Dr. Tran said. "We can't go to the FDA yet, we need proof. More samples. Real trials." Lena's eyes blazed. "Then let's build it." From that moment, a new version of her began to form, one no longer defined by loss but by defiance. Her heartbreak became research. Her loneliness became focus. Her unborn children became her reason to keep breathing. Each night she wrote notes to them in a journal. "One day you'll know why I fought this hard." It's not revenge, it's justice. When Evelyn found her writing by the fireplace, she simply said, "You're not running anymore, are you?" Lena shook her head. "No, I'm building something. And when it's ready, they'll see what they threw away." She didn't yet know that what she was building, a dream in a broken clinic, would one day grow into Nova Pharma, the name that would bring the mighty Helix biotech to its knees. But for now, she only knew one thing: exile hadn't destroyed her. It had refined her. Winter came early that year. The air in the small town where Lena Hale lived with Evelyn Carter turned sharp and clear, and snow dusted the rooftops like quiet forgiveness. By then, Lena was 7 months pregnant with twins. Her nights were restless, but her mind was on fire again. She spent every waking hour in the cramped office of the community clinic, working beside Dr. Isabel Tran, the brilliant and unorthodox physician who had taken her in like family. The clinic was chaotic. Old files stacked on chairs, malfunctioning lab equipment patched with duct tape. But Lena didn't care. It was a place where science still meant compassion. And in that fragile chaos, something extraordinary was about to be born. One afternoon, Lena leaned over a stack of patient charts, her hair tied back, her belly pressing against the desk edge. Her voice trembled with both fatigue and excitement. "Isabel, look at this pattern. The liver enzyme spikes are consistent across every patient who used Helix's new compound." Dr. Tran adjusted her glasses, scanning the numbers. "That's not a coincidence. That's negligence. Or manipulation," Lena said quietly. "The same compound I helped design is being used, but with altered ratios. Damon Voss must have falsified the trial results." Dr. Tran frowned. "You realize what you're suggesting? That Helix is distributing a potentially dangerous drug, and you were the scientist behind it." Lena exhaled. "Then I'll be the one who fixes it." The conviction in her voice startled even her. That night, while snow fell outside, Lena and Dr. Tran drafted a plan. They would replicate the compound, test alternative versions, and develop a safer treatment, one that preserved efficacy but removed the toxic side effects. There was only one problem: money. The clinic barely survived on donations, but Dr. Tran smiled, a mischievous glint in her eyes. "I have something better than money," she said. "I have a barn," Lena blinked. "A barn?" The next morning, Dr. Tran drove her to the edge of her property, where an old red barn stood surrounded by frozen fields. When the doors creaked open, Lena gasped. Inside was a fully equipped laboratory, state-of-the-art instruments gleaming under soft fluorescent light. "My late husband was an engineer," Dr. Tran explained. "He left me comfortable enough to build this sanctuary. I use it for independent research. No board, no shareholders, no corruption." Lena ran her fingers across a microscope almost reverently. "This is incredible. It's yours," Dr. Tran said simply. "If you're brave enough to build something new, Tears burned in Lena's eyes. "I'm not brave," she whispered, "just tired of being erased." "Then let's write your name where no one can erase it." And so began the long nights, the hum of centrifuges, the scent of chemicals, the quiet lullabies Evelyn hummed upstairs to calm the twins moving inside Lena's belly. On a cold morning in February, 2 lives entered the world, Leo and Lila Hale. Tiny, perfect, and utterly unaware of the war their mother was waging for their future. Dr. Tran delivered them herself, laughing softly when she held them for the first time. "They have your stubborn chin," she teased. Evelyn, weeping openly, whispered, "And their father's eyes." Lena looked at them both and said quietly, "Maybe one day they'll inherit only the best parts of us all." Recovery was brutal. Sleepless nights blurred into days of feeding, crying, and formula stains on every piece of clothing she owned. But when she looked at her twins sleeping side by side, she found strength she didn't know existed. 2 weeks later, she returned to the lab. The others protested, but she refused to rest. "I don't have the luxury of time," she said. "I have something to prove." She worked with her newborns beside her crib, analyzing compounds, running tests through the night while they breathed softly nearby. And one night, it happened. A breakthrough. The compound stabilized under conditions where the Helix drug always failed. The side effects dropped dramatically. It was safer, stronger, revolutionary. Dr. Tran stared at the data, stunned. "Lena, this could change everything." Lena smiled faintly. "Then let's make sure it changes it for good." Within months, they filed their first patent. With Evelyn's savings and Dr. Tran's network of ethical investors, they established Nova Pharma, a startup dedicated to developing transparent, affordable treatments. Lena insisted on using her maiden name. No Mercer, no Helix, just Lena Hale, the scientist they had tried to erase. In the beginning, Nova was nothing more than a name on cheap letterhead, a few rented lab benches and an idea no one believed in. But that idea had fire. They didn't aim for profit, they aimed for impact. Their first product, a low-cost oncology treatment, began trials in 2 regional hospitals. The results were extraordinary. Fewer side effects, faster recovery, better outcomes. By the time her twins turned 2, Nova had secured FDA approval and signed contracts with multiple hospitals. For the first time since her exile, Lena could breathe. One morning, Dr. Tran handed her a newspaper. On the cover, a headline read, "New Biotech Challenger Rises. Nova Pharma Threatens Industry Giants." Beneath it, a photo of Lena at a conference podium, confident, radiant, reborn. Dr. Tran smiled. "They're going to ask who you are." Lena folded the paper. "Then let them find out the hard way." Across the city, in the glossy towers of Helix Biotech, Damon Voss slammed the same paper onto Adrian Mercer's desk. "We just lost our biggest hospital client to this Nova Pharma. Some nobody scientist named Hale is stealing our market." Adrian barely looked up from his laptop. "Then outbid them." "I tried," Damon snapped. "They refused. Said Nova's drugs are cleaner, cheaper, and more effective." Adrian frowned, finally glancing at the article. "Hale," he murmured. "That name sounds familiar. She's just a face for a small team. Forget her." But the doubt lingered in his voice. For the first time in years, something stirred. A memory he'd tried to bury under guilt and glass towers, and far across the city, as the morning sun poured through the windows of Nova Pharma's new office. Lena stood with her twins on either side of her, watching their reflection in the glass. "One day," she whispered to them, "we'll build something they can't take away." The empire that would one day expose Helix had just taken its first breath. 6 years after the night she was thrown into the rain, Lena Hale returned to the same world that had erased her name. Only this time she didn't come as a victim. She came as the CEO of Nova Pharma, the woman whose discoveries had reshaped the pharmaceutical industry. The woman Helix Biotech could no longer ignore. Her company had taken market share, credibility, and prestige. But what she had come to take today was truth. The morning of Adrian Mercer and Clara Voss's wedding broke bright and calm. The Mercer estate glowed under the sunlight, the same manicured gardens where Lena and Adrian had once exchanged vows. Rows of white chairs stretched toward the altar. A sea of guests shimmered in designer clothing. The tabloids called it the merger of love and legacy. Inside the mansion, Clara adjusted her veil, smiling at her reflection. Her brother Damon poured champagne nearby, whispering, "By tonight, the company will be fully under our control. Adrian's trust fund, the board votes, all finalized." Clara smirked. "And the name Mercer will belong to us." Neither of them saw the message arrive on Adrian's assistant's phone, an anonymous email scheduled for delivery precisely at noon. Subject line: "Before you say I do, you should know what you're marrying into." At 12:47 p.m., just as the string quartet began to play, a faint rumble rolled across the sky. At first, the guests assumed it was thunder. Then came the unmistakable whir of a helicopter. Heads turned. The officiant hesitated mid-sentence. A silver aircraft descended slowly over the estate, stirring petals into a white storm. Security scrambled, unsure whether to intervene. When the door opened, silence fell. Lena Hale stepped out in a navy suit, her posture straight, her gaze unflinching. Her auburn hair glowed in the sunlight, and holding each of her hands were two small children, Leo and Lila, dressed in soft beige, composed but curious. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Adrian froze at the altar. It was as if the world tilted back in time, bringing with it every memory he had tried to bury. Clara's eyes widened. Damon's smile vanished. Lena walked forward, slow and steady, as if she had rehearsed every step. She stopped at the edge of the aisle, her voice calm but firm. "Good afternoon," she said. "I hope I'm not interrupting. My name is Lena Hale, and these are your children." The crowd erupted in whispers. Phones came out. Cameras clicked. Adrian's mother gasped, clutching her husband's arm. "Richard," she whispered, "look at them. They have his eyes." Clara took a step back, her face pale beneath her flawless makeup. "This is insane," she hissed. "Security," but Adrian raised a trembling hand. "Wait," Lena's gaze locked on him. For a long moment, no one spoke. And then softly but clearly she said, "6 years ago, you accused me of betrayal. You believed lies over love. You told me to leave while I was carrying your children." Her words cut through the still air like a blade. "You never read my letters. You never asked why. But while you were building your empire of pride, I was building something else, something honest, something real." She turned slightly, gesturing toward the twins. "Their names are Leo and Lila. They are the proof you refused to see." A murmur spread through the audience. Every guest could see it, the unmistakable resemblance. Clara's voice rose, shaky with panic. "She's lying. This is some stunt. You don't even know if those kids are his." Lena reached into her briefcase and handed a document to the nearest security guard. "DNA results," she said simply. "Filed with the family court this morning." Damon's expression darkened. He stepped forward, forcing a laugh. "This is outrageous. She's trying to humiliate you, Adrian. Shall I have her removed?" Lena's eyes met his, cold and steady. "I wouldn't, Damon. Unless you want your offshore accounts and forged trial documents displayed on the projection screens right now." The crowd gasped again. Damon stiffened. From the back of the seating area, 2 men in black suits emerged, flashing federal badges. "Damon Voss," one said, "we have a warrant for your arrest for securities fraud and falsification of medical data." The color drained from his face. He turned toward Clara, but before he could speak, another agent approached. "Clara Voss, you're under investigation for complicity in financial embezzlement." Panic erupted. Guests stood, whispering, recording. Cameras captured every second, the arrest, the chaos, the stunning fall of the couple who had built their power on deception. Adrian stood frozen, staring at the woman he once loved. The woman now standing amid the ruins of everything he thought he controlled. Lena looked at him, her tone softening just enough to pierce through his shock. "I didn't come here for revenge, Adrian. I came for truth. For them." The twins clung to her hands, their faces calm but curious. The boy, Leo, glanced up at Adrian. "Mommy," he asked quietly, "is that him?" Lena nodded. "Yes, sweetheart. That's your father." Adrian's eyes filled with tears he could no longer suppress. He knelt instinctively, meeting the boy's gaze, then his daughter's. His voice broke. I didn't know. I didn't know about you." "No," Lena said softly. "You didn't want to know." For the first time in years, silence felt honest. Adrian's mother stepped forward, trembling. She knelt before the twins. "Hello," she said, her voice breaking. "I'm your grandmother." Lila tilted her head, studying her carefully before whispering, "Mom says you like roses." We saw pictures. Tears streamed down the older woman's face. Behind them, the federal agents escorted Damon and Clara toward waiting vehicles. The media already swarming the gates. Lena turned back to Adrian. "There's more you need to see," she said quietly. "Evidence of what they did to me, to the company, to you. But that conversation belongs in private, not in front of your guests." He nodded slowly, still in disbelief. "Why now?" he finally asked. "After all these years, why today?" She looked at the crowd, the luxury, the false perfection, and then back at him. "Because you chose this date, Adrian. The anniversary of the night you threw me out. I couldn't let that become your new beginning." For a long moment, he said nothing. Then, as the helicopter waited behind them, Lena turned to her children. "Say goodbye, kids. It's time to go." Leo tugged on her sleeve. "Will he come with us?" Lena hesitated. Then she looked at Adrian. "That depends on whether he wants to learn the truth or keep pretending." The wind picked up as they approached the helicopter. Guests watched, silent, awed, as the woman they'd been told was a ghost walked away with two living, breathing miracles. And in that moment, Adrian Mercer understood something that would haunt him forever. The empire he'd built on power and pride had just been dismantled. Not by a rival, not by an enemy, but by the very woman he'd once vowed to protect. Night fell over the city like a slow confession. The Mercer estate was now surrounded by flashing lights, police cars, reporters, and chaos. But far above the noise, in a quiet penthouse overlooking the skyline, Lena Hale waited. She stood by the window of her office at Nova Pharma Tower, the moon reflecting off the glass walls. Behind her, two small beds sat in the corner, where Leo and Lila slept peacefully after the longest day of their young lives. They had asked too many questions. She had promised answers, but not tonight. The doorbell chimed once, hesitant. Then again, Lena didn't turn. She already knew who it was. The security system flashed an ID, Adrian Mercer. She pressed the intercom. "You're late," she said calmly. His voice cracked through the speaker. "I wasn't sure you'd let me in." "You came anyway," she replied. "That's a start." Moments later, the door opened and Adrian stepped inside. He looked different, disheveled, lost, stripped of the confidence that once defined him. His tie was gone, his eyes hollow. He carried no guards, no excuses, only the weight of what had just unfolded. He stopped a few feet from her desk, unable to meet her gaze. "They're both asleep?" he asked softly. "Yes," she said. They had a long day. The silence stretched between them, sharp and fragile. Finally, Adrian spoke. "Lena, I don't know where to begin. Everything I saw today, Damon's arrest, Clara's lies, it's all true," she interrupted. "Every word, every number, every signature. They used you, Adrian. They used us." He ran a hand through his hair. "I was blind. Damon was my friend. I thought he was protecting me." "No," she said quietly. "He was protecting himself. And you let him." Her tone wasn't cruel, it was surgical, precise, cutting through denial like a scalpel. Adrian lowered his head. "You have every reason to hate me. Hate is easy," she said. "It's living with what you did that's harder." He looked up, his eyes glassy. "I was told you were unfaithful. The evidence, it looked real. The messages, the photos, you think I didn't know?" she said, stepping closer. "I saw the work. The digital fingerprints. I spent months proving it. Damon forged everything to distract you while he falsified clinical data and stole millions. But you never checked. You never asked. You just believed the worst." He swallowed hard. "I thought I was protecting the company. You were protecting your ego." Her voice trembled slightly. "You wanted a reason to believe I wasn't as loyal as you because deep down, you couldn't handle that my work was outshining yours." He flinched as if the truth itself hurt to hear. For a moment, the room fell silent except for the soft hum of the city beyond the glass. Then Lena walked to her desk and opened a black folder. "This," she said, sliding it toward him, "is everything you need to clear your name. Proof that Damon and Clara falsified accounts under your signature. The Justice Department will use it to separate you from their crimes. He stared at the folder but didn't touch it. "Why would you do that for me?" "Because my children deserve to know their father isn't a criminal," she said simply. "But they don't need to know he was a coward." He closed his eyes. "I can never undo what I did to you." "No," she said softly. "But you can decide who you'll be next." Adrian's voice cracked. "If I could trade every dollar I've ever made just to go back, to listen, to trust you again, I would." Lena turned away, her silhouette framed against the city lights. "You can't buy redemption, Adrian. You earn it." He walked toward the window, standing beside her. The city stretched below them, bright, cold, merciless. "So what now?" he asked quietly. "Now," she said, "we clean up the mess. Helix Biotech has thousands of employees who will lose their jobs if it collapses. I won't let innocent people suffer because of your mistakes, or mine. You'd help save the company that destroyed you? I'd help the people who still believe in what it was supposed to be." He studied her face, the same face he had once loved and then doubted. He saw no bitterness there, only resilience. "What do you want from me, Lena?" he asked. She met his eyes. "Nothing," she said. "Not your money. Not your apologies. Just your honesty." He nodded slowly. "Then let me start there." He hesitated, then confessed. "After you left, I kept the lab notebook from our first project. I told myself it was because of the research, but it wasn't. It was because it was the last thing that still smelled like you." Her breath caught. It was such a small human truth, too painful to hate. She turned away again, blinking back the sudden burn in her eyes. "Adrian," she whispered, "some things can't be fixed, but that doesn't mean they can't be forgiven." For the first time, he smiled. A small, broken thing, but real. "You forgive me?" "Not yet," she said. "But I'm no longer angry. That's enough for now." He exhaled, as if he'd been holding his breath for years. Then, glancing toward the children's beds, he said softly, "Can I see them?" She nodded. He stepped quietly toward the corner, his eyes falling on Leo and Lila, asleep and innocent. His voice trembled. "They look just like you. And a little like you," she said. "They deserve both of us to be better than we were." He turned back to her. "If you'll let me, I'll help rebuild Helix the right way. Not as rivals, partners." She studied him for a long moment. "This isn't a reconciliation, Adrian. It's a reckoning." "Then let's start there," he said. The clock on the wall ticked softly. Outside, dawn began to tint the horizon. For the first time in 6 years, they stood together without anger between them. Only the quiet understanding of people who had finally faced the truth. Lena extended her hand. "For the company," she said. Adrian took it. "And for them," he replied, glancing at the sleeping twins. As the first light broke through the glass, illuminating the room, it felt like the beginning of something neither of them could name. Something fragile, but real. Forgiveness had not arrived, but the storm had passed. And in the silence that followed, both knew redemption would not come from the past they destroyed, but from the future they could still save. Spring came early that year. The city's skyline shimmered with new light, and the air felt gentler, like forgiveness itself had found a place to rest. At Nova Helix Integrated Labs, the newly merged company buzzed with cautious optimism. Posters bearing the slogan "Science with a Soul" hung across the hallways. Reporters had called the merger the most unexpected redemption arc in corporate history. But inside, behind the headlines, the real story was not about stocks or laboratories. It was about people rebuilding what they once destroyed and learning to love again. Not romantically, but responsibly. 6 months had passed since the wedding that never was. The arrests of Damon and Clara Voss had shaken the industry. Trials, confessions, and corporate investigations filled the news. But the public interest had quickly shifted to something more captivating. Lena Hale and Adrian Mercer, once enemies, now unlikely allies. Lena stood in her new office one Friday morning, reviewing a stack of research proposals. Her twins, Leo and Lila, were sprawled on the floor, coloring planets and comets, the same way they always did when she worked late. The sound of their pencils scratching softly against paper filled the silence. A gentle knock came at the door. She looked up. It was Adrian, holding 2 coffees. "Peace offering," he said with a small smile. "Depends," she teased. Is it the strong kind or the sorry kind? Both. They shared a quiet laugh, the kind that came not from comfort but from mutual exhaustion. Adrian set the cups down, then noticed the twins' drawings. "They're obsessed with space lately," he said. "Yes," Lena replied. "Lila says she wants to build rockets. Leo wants to study stars. Both require funding." "Then I'll make sure they have it," Adrian said softly. She smiled faintly. "Careful, Adrian. You might end up becoming the father you never got the chance to be." His eyes glistened. "That's the plan." They stood in a brief, tender silence before she shifted the subject. "The board meeting is in an hour. You're ready?" "As ready as I'll ever be to face 50 people who watched my downfall on national television." "Then give them something better to watch," she said. The boardroom that morning was full. Cameras discreetly placed in corners to document the official partnership between Nova Pharma and Helix Biotech. Executives whispered as Adrian and Lena entered side by side, a visual that once would have seemed impossible. When Adrian began to speak, his voice was steady, humble. "For years, we built walls between innovation and integrity. Nova tore those walls down. This merger isn't about reclaiming lost glory. It's about rewriting what corporate success means." He paused, looking at Lena. "It's about people like her, who turned betrayal into purpose." The room erupted in applause. Lena didn't smile. She simply nodded, a quiet acknowledgement that redemption was a process, not a headline. Later that week, the company held its first Open Science Day, a public event inviting patients, doctors, and students to see how medicine could be developed transparently. Lena gave a tour to a group of teenagers, explaining how her cancer treatment prototype had evolved from a desperate experiment in a barn to a globally recognized therapy. One of the students, a shy girl with a headscarf, raised her hand. "Dr. Hale, do you ever regret forgiving them? The people who hurt you?" Lena thought for a moment before answering. "Forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. It means choosing to live free from hate. Because hate is heavy, and I had twins to carry." The group laughed softly, but her words landed deeply. Behind the crowd, Adrian watched quietly. He didn't interrupt. He didn't try to take credit. He simply let her be the light she was always meant to be. That evening, the company lights dimmed. The city outside shimmered in gold and silver reflections. Lena sat on the rooftop terrace of her penthouse, sipping tea while Leo and Lila played with sparklers. Their laughter danced through the night air. "Mom!" Lila shouted. "Look, stars." Lena tilted her head upward. "Those aren't stars, sweetheart. Those are airplanes. Still counts." Lila giggled. Adrian arrived moments later, carrying a box wrapped in silver paper. "For them," he said. Inside was a telescope, sleek, black, and polished. Leo gasped. "It's huge." "Now you can see real stars," Adrian said, helping him adjust the lens. As the children peered through it, Adrian looked at Lena. "Do you ever think about what might have been?" he asked quietly. She met his gaze, her expression unreadable. "Sometimes. But then I remember what is. And that's better," he nodded slowly. "I'm learning that too," she smirked slightly. "Still trying to control everything? Only the coffee supply." They both laughed softly, the kind of laughter that carried closure. Months later, as Nova Helix continued to thrive, Leo and Lila turned 7. Their birthday was held in the company atrium, decorated with planets, rockets, and galaxy lights. Friends, employees, and even Adrian's parents attended, their warmth genuine this time. When the candles were lit, Lila looked up at her mother. "Mom, what did you wish for when you were little?" Lena smiled. "Peace," she said. "And you?" Lila grinned. "A puppy," everyone laughed. Adrian leaned in. "You can grant hers. I'll handle the peace." Evelyn Carter, now a beloved grandmother figure to the twins, wiped a tear. "You did it, Lena," she whispered. "You turned pain into purpose." "No," Lena said softly. "I just learned that love can survive truth." Later that night, when the guests had gone and the twins were asleep, Lena stood alone by the window, watching the city glow beneath her. A message pinged on her phone. It was from Adrian. "Thank you for letting me be part of their world. You gave me a second chance I didn't deserve." She smiled faintly and typed back, "It wasn't about what you deserved. It was about what they needed. She set the phone down, turned off the lights, and whispered into the quiet room, "We're finally free." Outside, the stars burned brighter than ever. Not as a promise of what could have been, but as proof of what had finally become. 3 years later, the world had changed. The glass towers of Nova Helix Global shimmered over the skyline like a monument to second chances. The once scandalous merger had become a model for corporate ethics and innovation, cited in universities and business schools worldwide. But for Lena Hale, legacy was no longer measured in profits or awards. It was measured in mornings like this one, when the sun filtered through her kitchen window, catching the laughter of her 7-year-old twins as they fought over who got the last pancake. "You both win," she said, flipping another onto their plates. "That's not how competition works, Mom," Leo replied seriously. "It is when you're a parent," Lena smiled. "We make the rules." Lila giggled and leaned against her mother's shoulder. "Then you should make a rule that says no more school on Fridays." "Nice try," Lena said. "Ask your dad." Right on cue, Adrian Mercer entered the kitchen, his sleeves rolled up, holding a stack of files. He was staying with them that week while his house was under renovation, an arrangement that years ago would have felt impossible. "No school on Fridays?" he asked, feigning deep thought. "Tempting, but I think your teachers might disagree." "You're no fun," Lila pouted. "That's what everyone used to say," Adrian replied, smiling softly at Lena. She met his gaze, and for a moment, the room filled with quiet warmth, the kind that comes not from romance, but from reconciliation. Outside, the city thrived. Nova Helix had grown into a movement, not just a company. Their foundation funded medical research for underprivileged communities, provided scholarships for women in science, and created free clinics in places where healthcare once seemed like a dream. And at the heart of it all, Lena remained the same, steady, focused, quietly unstoppable. She had turned betrayal into innovation, pain into power, and isolation into a legacy of care. At the upcoming Global Innovation Summit, she was scheduled to deliver the keynote speech, an honor previously reserved for corporate titans she had once fought against. When she received the invitation, she'd hesitated. It wasn't pride holding her back. It was something more complicated, the knowledge that standing on that stage would mean closing the final chapter of the story that began the night she was cast out into the rain. The night before the conference, Lena couldn't sleep. She stood by her balcony, watching the light stretch endlessly into the horizon. Adrian joined her quietly, 2 mugs of coffee in hand. "Big day tomorrow," he said. "It feels like a lifetime ago," she whispered. "All of it. It was a lifetime ago," he said. "And you rebuilt it." She looked at him, searching his face, the man who had once been her greatest wound, and now, strangely, her truest ally. "Do you ever wonder," she asked, "why life gives us pain before peace?" He nodded. "Because peace without pain wouldn't feel like freedom." Lena smiled faintly. "You've learned a few things?" "You were a good teacher," he said. They stood there for a while, listening to the city breathe. It was the sound of survival. The next morning, the auditorium was filled to capacity. Thousands of innovators, journalists, and leaders waiting to hear from the woman whose name had become synonymous with integrity. When Lena stepped onto the stage, applause thundered like a storm. She paused for a moment, taking it all in. The same world that once judged her now standing in awe of her resilience. She began slowly, her voice calm but commanding. 3 years ago, I was a scientist who lost everything. My career, my reputation, and nearly my faith in people. I was betrayed by those I trusted most, accused of things I never did, and forced to rebuild from nothing. The crowd was silent, but sometimes losing everything is the only way to see what truly matters. Because when the world closed its doors, I found a window, one that led not back to power, but to purpose. Her words carried the gravity of someone who had lived every syllable. The truth is, revenge never heals. It only feeds the part of us that wants to hurt what hurt us. Real victory comes when you create something so good, so pure, that it outshines the darkness that tried to destroy you. That's what Nova Helix stands for. Not revenge, redemption. Cameras flashed. Reporters typed feverishly. Lena glanced at the front row where Leo and Lila sat beside Adrian, beaming with pride. My children taught me that forgiveness isn't weakness. It's a quiet kind of strength. It's the courage to keep building even when no one believes in you. It's the choice to love the world again, even after it's broken your heart." Her voice softened. "So to anyone watching this, if you've ever been betrayed, dismissed, or underestimated, don't waste your life proving them wrong. Spend it proving yourself right." The room erupted in applause, long, heartfelt, and unstoppable. Lena stepped back, her heart light for the first time in years. That night, as the conference ended, she returned home to find Leo and Lila fast asleep, clutching the little Galaxy Mobile Adrian had bought them. She kissed their foreheads gently, whispering, "You were my miracle." When she turned to leave, Adrian was leaning on the doorframe, watching quietly. "They're lucky," he said. "So am I," she replied. He smiled. "Then maybe we both got what we needed. Not what we wanted, but what we deserved." She nodded. That's how redemption works. Outside, the city lights flickered like constellations, proof that even after the darkest nights, something beautiful can still shine. Lena picked up her notebook and wrote a final line beneath the title, Phoenix Protocol, the research project that had begun her empire. The greatest revenge isn't destruction, it's creation. She closed the notebook, looked out the window, and whispered one last thought. A message not just to her past, but to anyone who had ever been broken. You can't rewrite the pain, but you can rewrite the ending. And now you've seen it, the rise, the fall, the reckoning. He destroyed her life in one night of blind anger. She rebuilt hers across 6 long years of quiet courage. And when she finally stood before him again, she didn't ask for revenge. She offered him truth. Because sometimes the most powerful comeback isn't a scream. It's success whispered in the language of peace. Lena Hale didn't need to humiliate Adrian Mercer. She didn't need to ruin him in front of the world. He ruined himself the day he stopped believing in love. All she did was remind him, and every one of us, that dignity doesn't disappear when someone betrays you. It waits, it heals, and then it shines. Maybe you've been where Lena was, discarded, underestimated, broken by people who were supposed to protect you. If so, let this story remind you. Your silence is not your weakness. It's the preparation for your rebirth. Forgive when you can, walk away when you must, but never ever forget who you are, because one day the same world that watched you fall will have no choice but to rise when you walk back in. If this story touched you, if it made you cry, smile, or even rethink what forgiveness really means, leave a comment below. Tell us what part of Lena's journey spoke to your soul. Share it with someone who needs hope tonight. And remember, this is a fictional dramatization inspired by real human emotions, protected under fair use for creative storytelling and education. No real persons, companies, or events are represented. Only the message is real, because in the end, revenge fades. But redemption echoes forever. Thank you for watching Celebrity Undercover Stories. Subscribe for more tales of transformation, courage, and truth hidden beneath power. And remember, sometimes the story you least expect is the one that changes everything.